The colony's livestock market stank like boiled blood and sour hay, the kind of smell that got into your tongue. I was only there because my freighter's fuel pump was busted, my bar tab was overdue, and the moonshine from last night was still chewing on my brain. I wandered in looking for cheap rations, not trouble. Trouble found me anyway. They had her up on the auction block like a prize bull, only this bull was over 8 feet tall, for arms like coiled steel cables, fur patching over skin the color of storm clouds, and tusks that gleamed when she scowled. She didn't look scared. She looked insulted. The auctioneer shouted her stats like she was a piece of machinery. Massive frame! Muscle density double standard! Can take a pounding without buckling! A ripple of alien chuckles ran through the crowd until the punchline dropped. Too big to breed. Can't fit the stud. Only worth her meat. The laughter got sharper. I leaned on a post, just watching. Maybe it was the hangover, maybe it was the way she looked like she could punch a tank in half, but I felt something twist in my gut. I sipped from my flask, and the auctioneer's eyes flicked toward me. We've got a human in the crowd, what's your offer, little man? I raised a hand in that universal, not me, wave. Wrong move. The crowd roared. Someone shouted, Tiny mate for the giant cow! The auctioneer slammed the hammer down before I could even close my mouth. Sold. To the drunk in the corner. My flask slipped from my fingers. They shoved a digital ownership contract into my hand, a legal mess of alien script and human translation, and slapped her restraints loose. She stepped down from the block, towering over me so much my neck popped looking up. Her eyes, golden, slit-pupilled, locked on mine. I felt a cold rush like I just made a very stupid bet. The butcher crew lingered nearby, still licking their teeth like they were picturing her steaks on a grill. One got too close. She snarled, deep enough to vibrate the floor, and lunged so fast his cleaver clattered to the dirt. He left holding his hand and cursing in 3 languages. They say her kind bonds for life to whoever shares their first meal. I thought it was just one of those old market superstitions they use to scare tourists. But the way she followed me out of the market, no hesitation, no questions, made me uneasy. She didn't walk behind me. She walked beside me, close enough that her arm brushed mine, close enough for me to smell something wild under the musk and blood of the market. You bought me, she said finally, voice like gravel rolling in a barrel. That makes you my mate. I tried to laugh it off. Lady, I was just trying to keep you from ending up in somebody's stew pot. Her tusked grin was sharp and slow. Mates protect each other from predators. Good start. She kept walking, but I could feel the weight of the crowd watching us, some whispering bets on how long I'd last. The sun on this rock was too bright, the air too thin, and my hangover was starting to lose the fight against the realization that I now legally owned, or was owned by, a massive, unbreedable alien who seemed entirely convinced she had just acquired a husband. My freighter's ramp loomed ahead, and I suddenly realized how small it really was. She ducked under the hatch with a shrug, brushing the ceiling with her upper arms as she looked around. Cramped, she said. Then she turned to me, lowering her head so those gold eyes locked with mine again. Where's our den? I opened my mouth to argue. She reached out, 2 of her huge hands resting on my shoulders, not hard enough to hurt, but enough to make my bones remember she could snap me in half if she wanted. I don't eat mates, she said. Unless they ask? I didn't have an answer for that. Not then. Not with her grinning like that. And somewhere in the back of my head, a very dangerous thought started whispering that maybe this wasn't the worst bad decision I'd ever made. She barely fit through the freighter's hallway, ducking under bulkheads and scraping her upper arms along the walls with a sound like sandpaper on metal. Every step made the deck plates groan. I tossed her a ration pack, thinking she'd want to eat alone in the cargo bay like any normal guest who just got rescued from the butcher's block. Instead, she followed me into the galley, sat cross-legged on the floor, and stared at me until I opened my own meal. Only then did she tear open hers and, without hesitation, start eating from my plate. It wasn't subtle. Her people didn't nibble. She bit clean through the protein slab, chewed slow, swallowed, and then licked the edge of the tray like it was a lover's collarbone. "We've shared the hunt," she said. "Bond sealed." I wiped sauce from my chin and tried not to choke. "That was just dinner. In my people's ways, that was a proposal." She leaned back, stretching in a way that made the ship's low ceiling seem like a mistake. "I accept." I muttered something about cultural misunderstandings, but she was already dragging blankets from the storage locker, sniffing them like she was picking fabric for a nest. She piled them in the corner of my cabin without asking. I told her she could take the crew bunk instead. She looked at me like I'd suggested sleeping in a sewer. "Mates share a den," she said. "For warmth. For safety. For crushing ribs, apparently." That night I woke up with her wrapped around me like I was a body pillow she was trying to strangle. Every breath felt like it had to negotiate with her forearms. I tried to wriggle free. She made a low, warning growl without opening her eyes. I stopped moving. Morning wasn't better. My back hurt, my ribs hurt, and she was in my galley again, crouched over the coffee maker like she was deciding if it was prey. She pushed a mug toward me. "You're small," she said. "But stubborn. That's good. Small males who survive first night make strong mates." I decided not to ask what happened to the ones who didn't. Around midday, someone knocked at the airlock, one of the debt collectors I'd been avoiding for months. Before I could stall him, she was there, blocking the doorway like a living wall. He didn't even get a word out before she bent, grabbed his collar with one hand, and flung him down the ramp. He rolled into the dirt and scrambled away, swearing. I stood there with my mouth half open. She closed the hatch, turned, and brushed imaginary dust from her knuckles. "Predator gone. Den safe." "Yeah," I said slowly. "Safe." She grinned at me, tusks catching the light. "We'll mate soon. After you've fattened." I coughed into my hand. "Excuse me? You need more meat on you," she said matter-of-factly. "Otherwise you'll break." I decided right then that asking for details would probably shorten my lifespan. Instead, I poured myself another drink, wondering if I'd just adopted the galaxy's most overprotective, terrifying, and confusing girlfriend, and if maybe, just maybe, I was starting to get used to it. Word had already spread through the colony by the time I took her out for supplies. People didn't whisper quietly here, they leaned on railings, leaned out of windows, and made comments just loud enough for me to hear. "Guess she doesn't need furniture, just mounts him on the wall. Bet he needs a ladder." I ignored them, but she didn't. Her head swiveled toward every voice, gold eyes narrowing until the laughter died. The market stalls gave us a wide berth. A delivery drone almost dropped my order when she bent low to inspect it, sniffing the crate like it might bite her first. The merchant stammered through the bill, while keeping both hands in plain sight. She paid him by tossing a small nugget of some precious metal from her own pouch, which shut him up fast. Children didn't have the same fear. A few bold ones followed us, giggling, until she scooped one up with a lower arm and lifted him high enough to see the sky better. The kids squealed with delight, and that only made the adults more nervous. An alien that size winning over their kids was like a wolf getting friendly with the sheep. Back on the freighter, she started what she called courtship displays. For her, that meant sharpening a set of nasty-looking blades on the galley counter while making deliberate eye contact. She flexed her arms in a slow ripple of muscle, growled whenever another woman looked at me too long, and rearranged the furniture so the bed was directly under the heating vent. "For breeding season warmth," she explained. One evening, I was trying to eat without drawing attention to myself when she casually announced, "I am too big for most males to mount." I nearly inhaled my drink. "Not the kind of info I needed over breakfast," I said. She tilted her head, confused at my reaction, then added, "That is why you are a challenge. I like challenges." Somewhere in between the intimidation and the muscle flexing, she started asking questions about humans. I told her about the wars, the stubbornness, the fact that my species will try anything twice just to see if it kills us. She listened like I was describing an apex predator she'd never considered. Your people are strange, she said. Small bodies, but you don't act small. I think that's why I want you. 2 days later, a trader from the market showed up at my ramp, pretending to offer payment for spare parts. His eyes kept flicking toward her, sizing her up like a carcass. Before I could shut the deal down, she stepped forward, towering over him, and let her tusks show. The meat, she said slowly, is already claimed. The man left without another word. I thought that would be the end of it, but the next morning I got an official summons from the Colony Council. The paper was stiff, the ink formal, but the words made me laugh out loud, then stop laughing immediately. Apparently my purchase had triggered an ancient interspecies marital recognition law. If a human bought an unbreedable female and she bonded to him, the union was recognized as a permanent life mating. I looked at her. She looked at me. She didn't look surprised. Of course, she said, as if it was obvious. You bought me. You fed me. You defended our den. The council is just slow to notice what was already true. Somewhere between the laughter, the panic, and the mental image of trying to explain this to another human, I realized I was in way too deep to back out now. And judging by the way she was watching me, that was exactly where she wanted me. The council chamber was colder than I expected, and not because of the air vents. A half-dozen species sat behind curved desks, pretending they weren't staring at the 8-foot mass of muscle beside me. The chair in the middle adjusted her glasses, cleared her throat, and read the verdict like she was announcing a weather report. By Clause 12 of the Interspecies Matrimonial Regulation Act, you are hereby recognized as bonded mates. This bond is for life. I opened my mouth to object. She put one massive hand on my knee, a quiet warning. It is done, she said. Do not waste breath fighting fate. The council stamped the documents and dismissed us like they were done with a mild administrative nuisance. Outside, the sun hit my eyes, and she stood beside me like she just won something. You could have told me this was permanent, I muttered. You would have run, she said. And I was tired of running. She paused, glancing down at me with a softness that didn't match the sharp line of her tusks. I was ready to die that day. Then you fed me. Now I want to live. I didn't know what to say to that, so I didn't. We walked back to the ship in silence, her shadow stretching over mine. When we reached the ramp, she stopped me with a hand against my chest. You've fattened enough, she said. My pulse jumped. Enough for what? Her grin was slow, deliberate. To see if small males really survive the storm. She leaned in, and before I could protest, her arms were around me, lifting me like I weighed nothing. The next few minutes were a blur of crashing furniture, a bed frame giving up on life, and me clinging on like I was riding a landslide. Afterward, I lay there staring at the ceiling vent she'd insisted on putting the bed under, wondering if I should be embarrassed or proud to still be breathing. She rested her chin on my chest, clearly satisfied. You may not fill me completely, she said with a smirk, but you keep me satisfied. Life settled into a strange rhythm after that. We ran cargo jobs together, me handling the paperwork, her handling anyone who thought about skipping payment. Debt collectors stopped visiting. Neighbors stopped joking, though whether that was respect or fear, I didn't care to guess. One evening, while I was doing repairs on the freighter's wing, she came up behind me, wrapping all 4 arms around my waist. Small predator, she murmured against my ear. Big heart. I couldn't tell if it was a compliment or a warning. Maybe it was both. And maybe, for the first time, I didn't mind either way.